Welcome to the video edition of The Fourth Curtain, featuring this week's interview. Catch the extended audio version with Alex and Aaron's commentary wherever you get your podcasts. On with the show.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Fourth Curtain. Today we have a stellar guest. Right, literally, see what I did there? You get it? Yes.
Planetary.
He's the creative force behind one of the most mind-bending, time-looping, existential crisis-inducing games of recent memory. It's one of my favorites. Alex, I don't know if I told you this before in our email exchange. Literally one of my favorites. And that's Outer Wilds we're talking about. And we're talking with Alex Beachum, who led the charge on this adventure. I think, tell me if I got this right. Was this your first commercial game?
Oh man. So our studio Mobius Digital was not no. The short answer is no. We did a few mobile titles before.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. But was this the first game you were creative director on, or was it?
This was the first game I was personally, that like first commercial project where I was the director on it.
Well, look at that. One and out of the park. And there's
no pressure.
There's no like shooting or killing either. So like, well, I mean, I guess there's plenty of dying.
The player can do like the player can't kill anything. A lot of violence is done to the player.
Right. Well, I say bravo to that. Welcome to the podcast. So great to meet you. How are you?
Good. Yeah. No, thanks for having me on. Doing pretty good. Pretty okay.
Right on. All right. Well, here's my first question for you. Because I just based on what I know, I got to imagine you're probably a little younger than me.
He's like, I'm 62.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, that's not my question, really. My question is, did you ever play Myst?
Yeah.
Yes.
I did. No, it's funny. Myst was actually because Outer Wilds started originally as my thesis project when I was in grad school at the USC's MFA Interactive Media program, and Myst was one of the games I looked at as sort of like doing prior art review for Outer Wilds.
Okay. Okay. Well, that makes me feel good because that was basically I was kind of curious if Myst was influence. Myst was a pretty big game for me. I mean, I guess when did that come out? In the must have been in the late 90s.
It was 90s. Yeah,
it was definitely 90s. Right? It was 90s. It came out a little bit before we did Myth because I remember we got into this big conversation with those guys about the name because Myth was kind of close to Myst.
Why?
We have some. I can relate to the name thing.
Oh yeah, did you get a little close to some other?
Obsidian did a little RPG. The Outer Worlds.
Okay.
That actually still happens, right? That we still get people being like, "Wait, what? Which one are you talking about?" It's pretty funny actually. Myst. No, I can understand.
Yeah.
What else did you look at in your thesis? Sorry, Alex, were you going to finish your question? Was it a...
No, go right ahead, Aaron. Go ahead. I'll get in line.
When he said he did this, he looked at Myst. It's like, well, what else did you look at?
Oh man. Okay. It's been well over a decade now. So give me a sec. I looked at, so there weren't that many that I looked at like really intentionally. Because I had some I was and am a huge like Zelda fan, and so there's a lot of Zelda DNA in it. I was drawing stuff from Wind Waker, obviously Majora's Mask. Antichamber. You ever play Antichamber?
That sounds familiar.
It's an indie puzzle game that does like non-Euclidean space stuff, but it's one of the first games that I can think of where like you learn the rules of how these mechanics work, but it's something you could have done the entire time. So it's way more, it's like kind of like doing the systems-y kind of like, it's like very knowledge based. And definitely there's some DNA from that in there. I don't know how intentionally, actually. I think that was a game I played at the time and wasn't really thinking about it as prior art. But then in retrospect, it's like, oh, yeah, that probably left an impression.
It's like Portal on acid is one of the images that comes up.
Yeah, it's a really cool game. I haven't played it since, honestly. I keep meaning to go back and give it another go. But
Antichamber. That's what you're talking about, Antichamber?
Antichamber, yeah.
Okay.
Other inspirations, like a lot of the inspirations for Outer Wilds were less video games, actually, and more like a lot of movies. Apollo 13 in 2001 were big reference points for just like the style of like how space travel was portrayed. Especially since at the time, now there's like a million space video games, it feels like, in a good way, but at the time I feel like that was a genre that just like wasn't very represented in like the modern, in terms of like you get in a spaceship and go explore. And so like one of the original goals was to make a space exploration game that was doing like capturing more of the feeling of those films that I mentioned, and not trying to go as heavy. I mean, you mentioned combat earlier, or like, you're not going out to fight things or to colonize, or to like stake your claim on, it's very much just for knowledge's sake.
Yeah. I mean, after I played it, while I was playing, maybe after I played it, I was describing it to somebody as a roguelite mist.
That actually,
you're bringing it back.
Yeah, no, it's funny. No, it's also funny that you say that, because way back at the very beginning, I initially wanted it to be a roguelike.
Okay.
That's kind of where the death mechanic comes from. Originally, it was going to be, I was like, oh, every time you do a run, you wake up, and every time I was going to have like randomized elements, like planets maybe in different orbits, and Loan, who helped out on the design team when it was a thesis project. We went to school together, and then he's the other co-creative head at Mobius Games right now, and right now, he literally like founded it with Mossy. I came on a year later. I just like, he was the one who was like, everything you're talking about, I don't think you want that. I don't think making this a roguelike is going to help any of your other goals. And I was just like, yeah, you're right, actually. And so that's when it was like, okay, well, this is going to be like the same solar system every time. And then it was like, well, I still want you to be going through, there still needed to be a fixed time limit, because we needed to hit the reset button, because we got all these Brittle Hollow falls apart, right? You can't, like, once it falls apart, it's done. And so it's like, we knew we needed a reset. And so it was a question of like, well, is this going to be like part of the story or not? And I just thought it sounded more interesting if that was part of the narrative in the world. And that's kind of how it became a time loop game, weirdly.
Okay. Basically, you realize there was some finite nature to your simulation that you couldn't really design beyond. So it's like, all right, we're just going to restart it.
Essentially, like, wanted to get away with all this crazy stuff. And the idea of the player being fragile, we knew they were going to die a lot. And it being this thing, and within the roguelike DNA, meaning that like, oh, it was meant to be like, the idea that you were going to do runs was there from the very beginning. But it actually, the idea of it being like a time loop that you do runs over and over again through came a little bit later.
Okay. All right. Well, so how did I got so many questions. So like the genesis of the game, like the beginning, like where did it start? I mean, did it start with the structure of the game, or did it start with you wanted to make? I mean, you said you wanted to make a space game where you explore. Did it like, when did the story and the narrative start happening? I'm always curious. Like,
yeah.
Everybody does things in a different order, or has a different sort of like point of view of like what's important to get at. I'm kind of curious where you started.
No, it's a good question. And fortunately, I've spent some time like a year or two ago going back through all of our old design docs and all of my, personal notes and journals. And I feel like I have a pretty good sense of, because it's been so long. And I have a really bad memory for this kind of stuff. But I'm fairly confident in like the broad strokes. So because it started as a student project, it started out as, okay, some context, I guess, is that, so the MFA program at USC is a 3-year program. And the third year, you spend the entire year working on your thesis project. Which can kind of be anything. At the time, at least, they sort of wanted us. They were like, try to do something that, pushes the envelope of interactivity or like the interactive medium to some degree. And so the year before, we have a class called thesis prep, and you're doing like a bunch of prototypes, and then you're getting feedback from classmates and your professors, and everyone's trying, kind of just stressing out, panicking, like, what am I going to do for a whole year? What do I want? Is this what I want to do? Is this what I want to do? And I had a thing that I had made the previous semester. So this is like a full year before thesis. I had made for this. It was called a world building class. And that was like the early. So we just had to make a little like a world essentially. And I don't know why, but I remember just being like, I wonder if I can get kind of Mario Galaxy style physics, but in first person, like running in Unity. Because I was still learning kind of how to put things together and program and all that. And I just started noodling because I always liked the idea of having a game where you're like, you have a ship, but you can get in the ship and walk around the ship, right? That's like there's not like a loading screen or whatever. And so I kind of got that stuff up and running. And for the world building class, I think I have like a video of it on my YouTube channel, actually. It's called Spaceworthy. And it has the prototype for what became Brittle Hollow. It's actually called Brittle Hollow in that assignment. And then there's also this foggy area full of anglerfish. And those were like the two things that kind of like somehow persisted. But the ship looked very different. And so from that early, just I want to make miniature planet, like big miniature planets. Oh, and the meteors hitting Brittle Hollow, and it was like flying apart. I was kind of just messing with spaceship simulation physics and planet physics in Unity, maybe is like the simplest way to say it. And then in thesis prep, we were doing all these little prototypes, and I was clearly gravitating towards wanting to do something like space game exploration-y related. I had a prototype where you flew a little model rocket, and then it was really hard, so you like crashed them, and then you got to go get into the big rocket, and that led to the little model rocket in the village of Outer Wilds. One was this cabin that moved whenever you weren't looking at it, and all the trees did too. One of them had this little camera on a little object you threw at a moon. So you get the idea, right? Yeah. It's like all these little prototypes that I thought were standalone ended up having this we just kind of ended up taking them and like duct taping them together. Even ones originally, I remember the quantum one was never supposed to be part of Outer Wilds for the first few, at least months of development. And then one of my thesis advisor, I remember he expressed some disappointment because he was like, I thought that was just going to be your thesis. That was so weird and interesting. And you're doing this space thing. What's that about? And I was just like, I was like, oh no, like he's calling me not weird. And I was just like, I really felt bad about that. I was like, I'll show you, Peter. I can be weird. We're just going to take this we're going to make a whole moon that's quantum. I'm really grateful for that. He gave me that feedback because that's like the only that became such a core part of the game. I'm scattershot and rambling because that is sort of the way it kind of came together.
Well, that's super cool. I mean, it sounded like you started with basically building things that were neat. And you kept the stuff that you really liked.
I guess the other through line, because it wasn't quite as simple as like, all these prototypes and we just jam them together and boom, here's video game. It's more of that stuff was happening. And then on in this like parallel track, I guess I was starting to think about, what would be the thesis of it, I guess. And I don't remember I remember this is actually a pretty pivotal thing because another colleague, quick aside, I guess, the through line of Outer Wilds is just like, I know a lot of wonderful people and I've gotten very good advice over the years. And someone will just say something like, oh my God. And then that ends up being like the next piece of the puzzle. So my colleague, Simon Wiscombe, who's also one of our classmates and we were all in that thesis prep class together. I remember I was struggling to figure out like what was like kind of, I was just struggling. We were all struggling about like, what is our thesis going to be? And he suggested, he's like, what if you make an emotional prototype? Instead of trying to figure out the mechanics of what you do in the game, what if you just like try to like get the vibe that you want? And so I made this, one of my other prototypes from that class was you roast a marshmallow over a campfire, and then in the distance, the sun explodes, but it's like more like a fireworks show. And you just kind of sit there as it gradually gets bigger and bigger. And like the planets explode one by one. And eventually the one you're standing on explodes. And that is to my best, I think that's where the Supernova came from. But that captured that vibe, right? That like, we're just going to chill, right? Yeah. You see, I almost don't, it's hard to explain with words because it really was, the purpose of it was to communicate that emotion and feeling. And then that really became sort of the emotional core of like everything we built around after that.
Right on.
Cool.
I have like a lot of sensory memory of that piece of music starting and then the screen starting to go white. So it works. That was very good. Why don't we roll back a little bit? I got way more Outer Wilds questions, but
Alex questions.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Michigan.
Michigan. In the Midwest.
In the
right
Midwest,
on.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then did you got an MFA at USC, which I think Genova Chen's I think is maybe 2 episodes before this one. Also
awesome.
I think he has an MFA from you. I know he
no, he went to, because his thesis, I believe, was, I want to say Flow.
Cloud. Yeah.
Oh, it was Cloud. You're right. It was Cloud, and then he did Flow, and then of course Flower and Journey. No, because when I was a student there, Journey came out, I think, while I was there, and that was a huge thing. Everyone was
okay.
Yeah.
But where did you go to college before that?
Michigan State.
Oh, right on. Okay, yeah. Michigan State. I know colors for Michigan State are green, right? Green.
Nice. Green and white.
Green and white, and I can't remember the mascot. What's the Michigan State
yellow?
Oh, blue.
No, you're thinking University of Michigan. The other one.
Yeah, we had a University of Michigan guy at our studio, and he always wore the colors. That's why I got it. So there's another one, and it's green and white. Okay, good to know. Sorry, no offense. Please don't get mad.
We're the Spartans, which isn't funny because USC's the Trojans, and it's just like, I've got to, this is the same. Yeah.
Right on. Okay. And so growing up, were you were video games part of your life growing up, and were you thinking this is what I want to do, like when you got to college, or other?
It's funny. I think the through line of people who make video games of around my age, and this isn't universal, obviously, but it's so common. It's like none of us wanted to make video games because we didn't know that was a thing people did. Like we didn't know humans made video games. I don't know. It's hard to, it's just really, it's funny. So growing up, well, I actually originally wanted to be a filmmaker. And it's what I spent a lot of my undergrad. I got it. This didn't work at all, but I tried to dual degree in mechanical engineering. And the closest thing Michigan State had to a filmmaking degree. And then at the 11th hour, I was just like, nope, we're going to do video games. And it somehow worked out.
What was the closest thing Michigan State had to a film degree? What was that?
They had, oh my God, it used to be called telecommunications, and then they switched it to DMAT, which was digital media arts and tech. And then I did a specialization in video production.
Okay.
And they also they started a specialization in games, which is pretty awesome. And so my final year, I was actually able to take some classes in like Unity and Maya and start learning some of that stuff before going to grad school. But growing up, we had a family PC. We played like
that's cool.
The Magic School Bus point and click adventure games was probably like one of the earliest things. And to Star Wars Rebel Assault 2.
Yeah,
nice.
Like the full motion video one.
Okay. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
it's not a CD-ROM game.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's like, well, you had to boot it off a floppy. We had like a joystick. So, and then later we got Game Boys for like car trips. We didn't have a console for a long time. First console we had was a GameCube.
Hey, that's a good one to start with.
Yeah. No, it was good. But so it was more. So before that, it was like the thing where going over to friends' houses who had video games, it's kind of, it's like a treat. You're just like, it made them more alluring in a way. But my sister Kelsey and I, and Kelsey was the writer on Outer Wilds. We both, we like made a lot of movies together growing up. And we would also do things that, like, in retrospect, I'm like, that was essentially making a video game. And then like in middle school, I got into making stuff in RPG Maker. But looking in retrospect, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, of course ended up being a video game designer. But at the time, it just didn't occur, I think, to.
What made you realize it was something you could do?
A couple of things kind of all swirling together, I think. A big part of it was my sister started dating their current spouse, John, at Michigan State. And John knew from a very young age that they wanted to be a video game programmer. And so they were going through the game path at MSU and also doing a CS degree. And I remember seeing this project they were working on in Unity. It was where you controlled a manatee and you were eating cabbages and swimming along and just being like, oh, wait a second, this is pretty neat. And I started thinking about those old RPG Maker projects I used to work on. Boy, I don't know. And like, I don't know, there's this realization where I was just like, wait, I have like way more opinions and I spend more time reading like news articles about video games than I do film. And the engineering, I had decided I just didn't want to be an engineer and finish that degree. The video games have this technical side to them that has always kind of tickled my brain. The idea that you're still building these narrative worlds and experiences, but they have to work in a way that films just don't.
Yeah, right.
And so I don't know. I just thinking about it, it's like, oh my God, like maybe video games are the perfect in between and just straight up engineering and filmmaking. And there's also this, I think, this general feeling, which sounds, I think might have been accurate, where I literally was like, because I wasn't very confident in my storytelling abilities, especially in terms of film. Like I took a screenwriting class my senior year of undergrad. That was awesome. The prof was awesome. And it boosted my confidence a lot, but I was still just like not in my head. I was like, well, video games are a much younger medium. It's still like the Wild West. The bar for that like story in games is so much lower than film. Maybe I'll be fine. And also because it's a younger medium, I think I was excited by the idea of getting like, there was just more unexplored territory than with film, right? It's just easier to do something that no one's ever done before. Or something just really interesting, like what they said with our thesis, like try to kind of push the boundaries. And I thought that idea was very exciting, in addition to the perceived bar being maybe lower because it was so younger.
Yeah. I think that's an entrepreneurial trait, that's like, it's exciting to go and try and do something that hasn't been done before. And I think you're right. Video games have that sort of built into it because it's half technology, half creativity,
It is really, even now, because I mean, it's been a while since I was going through all of that. And even now, it's like, I feel like the bar has been raised considerably. Like the stuff that's getting released now it's just so impressive. But just the sheer, there's still so many it's like the possibility space is just so high.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What kind of games do you play? Like now?
Oh, now? Let's see. The last year I've played way more video games than normal, actually, because I had a period of about 4 years where I had a really bad RSI kind of arm injury. And just like couldn't play anything for essentially 4 years. And so I've spent the last year kind of making up for lost time.
What are you doing?
And so recently, I mentioned I was a huge Zelda fan. I'm finally going through Tears of the Kingdom, which actually Tears of the Kingdom didn't even come out that long ago. It's not like I missed it by that many years, but I've been playing that. And I just played Chants of Sennaar, which is really cool.
Oh, cool.
Right on. All right. Well, so back to MSU and then USC. So you get out of MSU with you end up with a degree in digital media arts,
something like that.
something like that.
I think.
What was it? What was the process like applying to USC, like for the master's program? Is that pretty competitive?
As far as I know, fairly. I'm pretty sure I got my application in on the final day. They allowed it too. So that was a close run thing. Yeah, I applied to a few different grad schools. And I was just so lucky to be able to even consider grad school at all, especially given it was this was like 2010. So like we were like in the midst of the recession and everything. And so there were a lot of folks my age that were like, what if I went to grad school for a few years before entering the workforce? Yeah, it was the reason I of the ones I looked at, my preference was USC, was they were the most clearly narrative focused of the kind of, at the time, interactive media kind of games programs. It was the longest program too. I remember really liking the idea that your third year was just this thesis that you just get to do your own project. I also, because I looked
cool.
Yeah, like I looked at the ETC. What does that stand for? The Entertainment Technology Center, I want to say, in Rochester.
Okay.
No, not Rochester.
That's Carnegie Mellon.
Carnegie Mellon, yeah. Which is a cool program, and I know people who either taught there or went through it.
That's Jesse Schell's program.
Yeah. And no, I looked at that and that was cool, but that one clearly had this more like industry focus, like you go work like for a company kind of as your thesis, almost kind of a thing.
Yeah, probably Jesse's company. He's smart that way.
or I think it was making something like whatever you made was a little more. So USC's thing was, because USC's program is literally part of the cinema school.
Is that George Lucas's thing? Did he start that one?
I think there's at least one building named after him.
There definitely is a building with his name on it on the campus over there.
It's the reason it's because there was a George Lucas one. We were in at the time we were off campus in the Zemeckis Center. So Robert Zemeckis had his own building. Now the program has its own building, like on campus with the rest of them. But I completely lost my train of thought.
That's my fault. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. That's just that'll happen a lot here. I'm just gonna settle and get used to it.
No, all right. But so I'm just kind of curious, like what it was like being a grad student at USC. I mean, I think we got kind of a good vibe on. I mean, I don't know. It sounds to me like at that program you're encouraged to try new stuff. Genova kind of said the same thing. He said one of the professors sat them down and said, if you're here to just learn how to make a game and get a job, you're wasting your time. Get lost. Like you're here to try stretching.
Yeah. I think they still, so, and I'm obviously not, I want to say that, like, I'm not, I don't have a ton of, I don't know what it's like to go through that program now, obviously, but I know people who are going through it. I'm actually advising a couple of thesis projects. I've never done this before, so I'm like, like trying to like hope this is useful, hope this is helpful. And it's interesting to see how the program has changed. It's one of those things where I don't know if it's changed. It's not like good or bad necessarily. It's just different now. It does feel a little more focused towards like people. Like when I was there, not even everyone in my class wanted to make games, much less kind of like mainstream industry kind of stuff. And I think it's very naturally shifted towards more what the rest of the cinema school is, where it is a little more focused on people kind of wanting to do definitely video games, and then also just. But I still so like the two people whose thesis projects I'm advising, though, I mean, they're both very much trying to do really interesting stuff still, and very much kind of trying to push the boundaries. So I think at least in the grad program that kind of current's definitely there. But I'm really grateful that I went through it kind of when I did, because I don't know. I think it had a little more there was a little less pressure maybe to make something polished is maybe the best way to say it. I think the program still has that kind of experimental edge to it, but I see what people are making now and I'm like, oh my God, like I would have like Outer Wilds Alpha was so jank.
Well, I mean, I think it's awesome that there's a place where people can invest themselves in projects that don't necessarily have to be commercially successful. They just need to be creatively successful or interesting or new or learn something from it. And that's I think kind of rare.
I agree. Awesome. And that's why part of me is like with, I almost don't want to, it's tough, right? Because it's like, well, on one hand, it's like, well, no, I want people to get jobs, and the state of the industry these days is rough. And on the other hand, I just really want to be like, no, just don't worry about like market viability. Make the cool experimental weird thing, and while you're in school and you have the chance, right? It's like balancing that with like, I get it. People want good portfolio pieces. They want to get hired. It's completely like as well they should. Like I just got lucky as hell.
Are you working from home? Or are you? Where are you?
Oh yeah,
where's
no,
your-
I'm at my place.
Okay, that's cool. The whole studio.
We have, so we're not fully remote. We still have our office in kind of near downtown LA, and kind of like the Southern Arts District. But ever since COVID, we just, because obviously, like everybody, we became fully remote. Well, specifically for us, it's while we were working on the Outer Wilds DLC, and so we kind of got used to that process, and so now we're just a very hybrid studio. Like our head of production just lives in Seattle. Our art director just moved to oh my God, New Hampshire. But I still go in occasionally, not as much as I used to. But once we ramp up in production, I'll be back in the office more, along with Lowen and everyone else.
Right on.
Cool.
So what happens after you get out of the master's program? So you did a bunch of stuff. I'm guessing it wasn't called Outer Wilds at the time. Maybe it was.
It was actually. Sure. I remember when we named it Outer Wilds because I had it was still called Spaceworthy when I pitched it to, because in addition to my thesis, it was also what's called an advanced game project, where it's sort of like you pitch and you get people from the Viterbi School of Engineering working on it. In addition to you have a bigger team, you have more resources. We worked with some external art schools, which was really cool. And we had I forget how big the team was, but we had a fairly sizable team for even the student version. But it was called Spaceworthy for a while as a holdover from that world building class. And I knew it needed to. I think there was feedback at some point, like, the title's generic. He should. And so we were in a class and we were all just spitballing ideas. And I think, at some point I was like Cosmic Wilderness, and then someone was like, no, Wilds. And it's like, oh yeah. And then Outer Wild. I don't know. It was like a combined, it was like a group chat. And we were just at the end of it, I was like, Outer Wilds. I kind of like that. And it never
Cosmic
had a reason
Wilderness
to change
is cool too. That should be the sequel.
So you get your degree and you've got this project with a name.
Mm-hmm.
Then how,
the reason I'm so no, we had the name is because of Obsidian years later comes out with the outer if I seem like no, we had the it's Obsidian's fault. Okay,
all right. You had prior use. I didn't have that with Myst and Myth. Okay. Well, so how did you meet up with Mobius? How did that come about?
We'll be right back. If you like what you're hearing, like and follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. And now, a word from our sponsors. Great games aren't just made, they're crafted, pixel by pixel, idea by idea. Amber doesn't just develop games, Amber forges the future of play, one project at a time. From the magic makers at Disney to the tech giants at Amazon and Warner Media, the biggest names in the industry trust Amber to turn their wildest ideas into reality. Why? Because the talented teams at Amber believe in pushing every boundary, breaking every mold, and having a bit of fun while they're at it. Need a partner who knows the game and plays to win? Amber has the talent, the passion, and a global network that's ready to roll. So let's skip the loading screen and get straight to the action. Discover how Amber can power up your next project at amberstudio.com. Do you want your game to live forever? To supercharge it with immense powers of endless content, a buzzing gamer community, immortality, and coin? CurseForge for Studios, an exclusive service for visionary game developers, allows you to add safe, cross-platform mods to your game and enjoy all the benefits of user-generated content without any of the risks. With CurseForge for Studios, you can harness the creativity of our 165,000 devoted creators and the traffic of 43 million monthly gamers. You can also level up with premium mods and grant your game new revenue streams. Trusted by AAA studios, CurseForge for Studios is an immortality potion for your game. Enter studios.curseforge.com and join the UGC era. Leveling up your game dev career but not sure where to start?
Maybe you're trying to break into the industry, looking to connect with other people who are making games.
Consider joining the International Game Developers Association, the IGDA. the world's largest nonprofit member-driven professional association serving all individuals who create games.
I was in the IGDA in Chicago, met a lot of people, great way to network.
The IGDA exists to support and empower game developers around the world in achieving fulfilling and sustainable careers,
Discounts,
educational and advocacy-based resources,
mentorship.
and solidarity across 160 plus chapters.
To join the IGDA, visit igda.org/membership and use the code IGDA 4th Curtain 15, no spaces there,
To get 15% off 1- and 2-year memberships, as well as a student membership.
Joining the IGDA is a great move for your career, and as a nonprofit supporting everyone making games, it's a great move for the whole community. Join today. Hey listeners, it's Alex from the Fourth Curtain.
And Darren here, we want to give a quick shout out to the team at High Vibe PR.
High Vibe PR is our boutique communications firm. They're all about companies and brands defining the future of gaming, entertainment, and culture.
Look, when you're doing something big, you need the right people to help you tell your story. And High Vibe PR, they're the best at making it happen.
Absolutely. They've helped us at Look North World level up our messaging, connect to the right audiences, and stay ahead of the curve in this ever-changing industry.
So, if you're looking for a PR partner who gets gaming and entertainment like no one else, check them out at highvibepr.com.
That's highvibepr.com. Go give them a look. You won't regret it.
And now, back to the show.
Yeah, so the summer between my second and third years, I did an internship up at Microsoft. And
Hey, I did an internship at Microsoft.
Yeah?
Right on.
nice.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to get a job offer at the end of the internship as part of their college hire program. So I got the luxury of doing my thesis here with I didn't have to worry about looking for a job. I just had one lined up, which was awesome. I could just like you're saying, I could just be like, I have a job lined up. This can just be my experimental, whatever the hell I want to do with it. Kind of like, maybe I'll never get a chance to do something like this ever again. Better like make the most of it. So I was very fortunate in that sense. So then I went to work for Microsoft and I was on Project Spark. You ever heard of it? It was like a game maker for kids kind of a thing. Yeah.
I know a bunch of people who were on that project. Did it ship? It did ship?
It did
or did
finally
it not
ship. Yeah.
It did ship. Okay.
That project had a lot of cool things going for it. And it had some other issues, but it was cool. I was on that for about 7 months and essentially, so I was hired into the college hire program. The idea was that you kind of go between teams until you find like a fit and you get hired on permanently. But at the time, there was like some shakeups happening and people that had joined, because you're supposed to do a rotation for a year. But nobody was rotating between teams. Everyone was just stuck on one team. And then people who were reaching their ends of their rotation were not getting hired full time. And so the writing was sort of on the wall. It was like, okay, there's a good chance I hit the end of this period and I just get let go, essentially. And so at the time, there was an opportunity. So Loan, my colleague at Mobius, who he was the classmate who we worked on each other's thesis. So he had worked on Outer Wilds. I had worked on his. While I was going to work at Microsoft, Masioka was looking for someone to start a game studio with, essentially. And so he went to our thesis show and Loan told me, explain this recent. I think maybe he reached out to like the department and was like, can I have some names of people to like maybe, contact or whatever. Anyway, he got in contact with Loan. They hit it off and they founded Mobius and hired like an artist and I think and a programmer. And they started working on a mobile title called Terra Chroma. And then 7 months later, I'm being like, oh, well, I don't know about this Microsoft thing. And he actually just reached out of the blue and was like, hey, our programmer just got hired at DreamWorks. Do you want to like move back to LA and make indie mobile games and start as a programmer, I guess, which is funny because I do not have a CS degree. Loan does have a CS degree. And so that's kind of what happened. I was like, well, this seems, I was in my mid 20s. I was just like, if I'm going to like go do the indie startup thing, now would be the time, I guess. So moved back to LA, started working at Mobius, helped them finish and ship Terra Chroma. We started working on another project. And then a year after I started working there was 2015. That's when IGF that's when Outer Wilds was at IGF, and we ended up winning the design award and the grand prize. And everything started kind of going nuts from there, because we were like, Lone and I were like, wait a second, what if we just did Outer Wilds at Mobius as our next project? And Mossy was super on board with the idea, and we did that Fig campaign. Oh my God, that was ancient, ages ago. Annapurna got involved about a year later. Just stuff started happening.
Wow. That's awesome.
Did Annapurna shut down? Is that the one that recently?
Annapurna was the one, they had essentially their entire games division quit.
That's what it was. Yeah. That was recently, like a year ago, right?
That was very recent, yeah. But Annapurna, they still exist. They have hired.
They came back. Yeah. They've hired some pretty impressive folks. Are you guys still working with them, or do you know? Like, you have future projects with Annapurna, or no?
I'm actually not sure what I can say.
Sorry, edit this out.
Yeah, no, this is me. It's probably not. I should have vetted this with Jack, with our head of production, because we were like talking briefly about like it's not that big of a deal. It's yeah, I'm just gonna err on the extreme side of caution and not answer that.
Yeah. Do that, and we'll just interpret that however we want. It's totally cool.
No, it's not. There's nothing. My biggest worry now is people are gonna like read into. I'm just like, no, it's fine.
Can I change the subject and ask you about your film stuff? Because you wanted to be a film person.
Yeah.
What was was there like a movie? Was there like a series, what is it about film? Because I'm sure you have your favorite movie you've watched 300 times, all the lines and
I don't know if there's any movie I've watched that many times, but yeah. No, I mean, so I guess the reason I was I got into movies as a kid, because my mom showed me how to use the home video camera, and specifically showed me how to do stop motion with it. And that just sort of like, my little head exploded, right? Like I was like, oh my God, this is magic. And so I always really loved the, initially, especially kind of the VFX side of it. Cause I was also into magic tricks as a kid and stuff. This idea of creating illusions for people.
We got another magician in the room. You just always have that angle.
Yeah, that was really fast. That was good. And even now, I mean, I'm sure you can like know what I mean when I say like I love it when you do something in a game, because now we do everything in a game engine. Obviously, it's like nothing's practical like with a movie. But sometimes there are things we do like in the scene where I'm like, God, this feels like a trick. This feels like a magic trick we're doing, because I get like, okay, the dumb example being like there's like a mirror in I think it's only there if you do the DLC actually. And it's just, we just did the thing where you just duplicate the environment and flip it around. It's just a copy of the set, and then everything's duplicated. And I love that kind of stuff where I'm like, this isn't like some fancy rendering trick or anything. It's just the dumbest possible
movie
thing.
Magic. Yeah,
and it just it feels
in the biz we call that a hack.
I guess cool. I love hacks. Because it feels to me like doing like a practical VFX for a movie almost.
Yeah, like totally. Painting the effects on the glass or something.
Yeah, exactly,
like that.
Exactly. It's just there's this sense of like
I'm into that too. Yeah,
it's just because the player doesn't
movie
care
magic.
Or know. Exactly. Yeah. It's just that sense of like, God, this is so stupid, but it totally works.
Yeah.
And so I was really into that kind of angle, and then I got more and more into just as like a storytelling medium. I still love the language of cinema. I love editing and cinematography and just all of that. I think it's just really interesting, a really cool way to tell a story, because I've never been much of a my sister Kelsey is the one who she's so good with words and like storytelling with words, like just that's just never really been my thing. And so yeah, I don't know. It just we just made so many movies and little projects over the years growing up and stuff. It was just I just always liked having a project. And even now I'm just like I just always need a project. And so one of the many reasons why I look back and I'm like, yeah, obviously I'm in like it was either going to be film or games. The engineering Well, I guess engineering, you've got a project too, maybe, but anyway, yeah, no. So film, yeah, no. I still love movies a lot. And actually, the Outer Wilds DLC was actually really one of the things I loved the most about working on it. I won't like spoil anything here, but
yeah, don't spoil it because I haven't actually gone. I have the DLC and I haven't gone through it yet.
Okay, this I don't think is too big. This isn't really a spoiler. But Outer Wilds told the story in a lot of different ways, but was very, very text focused. And so the Outer Wilds DLC, the story is told way more through visuals in a way that cool. I got to kind of like get a little back into I did storyboards.
Nice.
And it was just really fun to get back to bring a little bit of that kind of filmmaking background into into the game. I'm reluctant to say background. I've never done film professionally, like hobbyist through and through. And also all of those storyboards were immediately handed over to the art team who made them not garbage, but just to be super clear. But it was a lot of fun.
That's super cool. Your sister, you work with your sister, and your sister
on Outer Wilds,
on Outer Wilds. Mm-hmm. Okay. How close are you in age?
2 years. I'm the oldest, and then Kelsey's 2 years younger. And then we have another sister who's 6 years younger, who we joke is the black sheep of the family because she's a lawyer instead of
Hey, I know some great people who are lawyers.
No. She's also awesome and very creative.
You're lawyers.
Yeah. No, she's great.
No, that's awesome. So, but what I'm always curious when family members work together, what the dynamics like. How like, do you guys ever disagree, have table flipping arguments and things like that, or is what's it like?
I'm the older one.
I mean, we're siblings, so we never fight ever about anything. No, of course we butted heads and stuff. But because we worked together on things growing up, there was definitely we just kind of are on the same page about a certain, like, there's a lot of stuff we just are immediately kind of on board with, because for Outer Wilds, the closest thing we had to a writer's room was the narrative meetings we would have with myself, Loan, and Kelsey. Because Loan and I were kind of handling the more like kind of narrative design, like, okay, where does this information, where does the player encounter X, Y, and Z? I was involved with a lot of the kind of like the high level plot kind of stuff going on. So we're Loan and Kelsey. And then Kelsey was way more like, doing 90%, 99% of like the actual text. And there'd be all the back and forth kind of. So we were just throwing ideas around. Those were really fun meetings.
Cool.
Are you older than your sister or younger?
Older.
He's 2 years older.
Yeah.
2 years older. Okay,
he's 2 years older than Kelsey, and they've had another sibling 6 years younger.
6 years. I'm sorry, I missed it.
Okay,
Sorry.
I'm just summarizing for you. The story in Outer Wilds, it's
no spoilers though.
Yeah,
no spoilers.
I don't think I'm gonna. I was just gonna ask if you guys thought about the alien language. Like you read everything in English, but it's like written in a different language, right?
You mean like the visuals of it?
Yes. Yeah.
If you're asking,
is there a way to decode that language? Yeah. Is there a language or a logic there? No. Okay.
I love the text that our art director Wesley kind of came up with for that, and it's really cool. And the way it branches, of course, and everything is definitely meant to feel a certain way. But no, you can't. We weren't that hardcore.
You start speaking it.
All right. This question comes from Owen, who's my son, and I think I told you that
you played the game together, which is
we played to kind of co-played on our own devices.
I love it when people do play the game like that.
Yeah, he finished it before I did. In fact, I got an ending, and I told him I finished it, and he's like, "Well, what happened?" And I told him you didn't finish it. But in any case, he was kind of curious. I think this was actually a really good question. So the game is. I would say the game is kind of guarded not the game, but like people guard themselves when they talk about the game because they don't want to give away stuff.
Yeah, have you been on the subreddit?
Well, I've
No,
been
let's do it.
in some parts of it, maybe not all of it. I'm sure it gets
Is it
very
all black?
Yes, it's like the redacted.
Exactly.
Black text, yeah.
No, people are. I mean, in which I love. Like, we love the fans and the way that they're so careful because they want other people to have the same experience they did.
Right.
Yeah.
But like, what's it like working on a game where you put it out
view spoiler.
and people have to be really guarded? Like, does that impact sort of like, word of mouth is still like a huge part of how people learn about games and all that. Like, was that a thing at all? Like, did you have to worry about or think about or?
I mean, the game has done so much better than we thought it would that we weren't. I think we were. I'm trying to think how to answer it. It's sort of like, because now I think it almost helps the word of mouth to some degree. It gives it this sort of like, well, why can't you tell anything about this? Like, what do you mean I just have to play it? I'm sure that also goes against it because people just have to, trust people essentially who won't tell them a thing about the game they're recommending. I guess, we just didn't really worry that much about it because it's like, what were we going to do? Right. We did spend a lot of time trying to figure out exactly what level of kind of spoilers, I guess, to put in trailers and promotional material, because we knew we couldn't, you got to show people something, right? There has to be a hook. And so I think where we drew the line is we were like, okay, we're going to we have to market this as a time loop game. Like, we can't not tell, it'd be great if we didn't. And there still are people that go into this and don't know it's a time loop game. And those have been some of my favorite playthroughs to see because that's just such a big moment when they're like, oh my God, it's a time loop. But no, that's on the Steam page, right? It's like, it tells you. We don't. I
went in 100% cold. 100% cold.
Yeah, that's the dream. I love that.
Yes. Me too. I was like, okay.
It's on the Steam page. It says it's a time loop. It doesn't say how long it is. It does not say what happens at the end of each loop. And that was something we there's nothing in the trailers about that either. So I don't know. It was an interesting problem because we were like, oh, we've got to be very careful about what we show for this. The DLC was because we knew about the reaction from the base game and we had fans when we started getting ready to promote the DLC. We approached the DLC, I think, because we knew that we had a fan base and people would want to hopefully play an expansion to it. We felt more confident being even more cryptic with the DLC trailer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And it was really
fun. Yeah, I could totally see how it ends up working to, I guess, to the advantage because it's like curiosity.
It's still tricky though. I remember there was one review of the DLC that they mentioned the trailer and they were like, wow, that was pretty crazy. I think they were like, yeah, the trailer's kind of ugly. They really buried the lead. We're like, hey, it's ugly. I think you mean just because they were like, yeah, the degree to which we just don't show the cool stuff of the DLC in that trailer.
Oh, right. Okay.
It was just pretty funny to see it called out in a review like that.
Yeah. I'm also curious how you guys put together the story.
Mm-hmm.
The game has a fairly unique structure.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. You could, because it is, then this is no spoiler, right? It's a time loop. So
yeah.
In some ways, the game basically takes place for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Yet there's more story to consume than that amount of time. So how do you even get figure out what to write, where to put it, how to sequence it?
Yeah.
You can't really control the order.
I'm going to try so hard to answer this in a way that isn't me just tangenting a million places. Because it's kind of like the question of how did this game come to be? It's a complicated answer. Because the story we started thinking about and working on the story very early on, essentially when it started as a thesis, because one of the early after all of the swirling massive prototypes and ideas and thematics and inspirations all kind of started to coalesce, one thing that became very clear was this idea of, this is going to be a game where it's about making an exploration game where players are only motivated to explore out of their own curiosity. That's sort of where I landed as like the theme, like the core, like the question of the thesis, so to speak. Like, can you make a game that does that, essentially? Because I guess to answer one of your earlier questions, what kind of games do I play? My favorite kind of games are the kind of games where they throw you into the kind of this crazy world, and it's up to you on some level to figure out what is going on, and sort of, kind of there's this kind of parallel track of here's like the narrative of the game that's hopefully interesting, and then you have your own player narrative of like the actions you're taking that matter in some way as well. And so the way we kind of went about trying to tell a story that's based on the player's own curiosity was, okay, it's going to be oriented around answering really major like questions about the world that you're in. And so the structure, the way I originally went about the structure was, okay, there's going to be 4 main, I called them curiosities, just because these are like internal dev names. And so there are 4 curiosities, and it was like, okay, well, we've got the solar system, and the solar system was kind of designed around what are interesting ways planets can change over time. The planets were not really designed initially with the story in mind. It was almost like, okay, here's a cool solar system. What kind of story can we, like, almost what history can we add to this world, and then start drawing threads between them. And so the big curiosities in the final game are, and I'm not going to spoil like what questions they answer, but it's the Ash Twin Project, the Quantum Moon, the Core of Giants Deep, and the Vessel. And so all 4 of those are things that are hidden in but you have to know how to get to those places, right? They're in very dangerous or very cryptic, hard to reach locations. But the idea was they each tell you a really like, they have a big plot reveal essentially. And so but we wanted those to be where it wouldn't matter what order you did these in. So it's like 4 mysteries, but it doesn't matter what order you do the mysteries in. And then everything else in the world that you find kind of points or tells you gives you a clue to one of those. And that structure was inspired by, there's a portrait gallery in The Wind Waker where there's this character who takes photos from around the Great Sea. And if you ask him about any specific photo, he tells you a little story about it. And I remember playing that and just being really enamored with this idea. Like, him telling me the story of this photo always made me want to go find the quote unquote real version, right? That's like actually in the world. And so Outer Wilds is a very elaborate, it's like, what if take that idea and like turn it into a whole video game where it's all about, you read these texts about these characters and they're referencing other places and people and ideas, and all of the things that they reference, you can go and find as a player. And that's kind of where the curiosity angle comes in. And so the ship log, where it's like this crazy conspiracy board, it looks really complicated, but it really is actually 4 distinct kind of mystery webs. Okay. And that's kind of how, right. And there's a lot we did to kind of make that work. It's like we made really sure that nothing that you find, let's say in like the Vessel web, none of it is going to spoil anything else in any of the other webs, to make sure that it works in any order. And I think that's why people play the game. They're like, oh, whoa, this is so complicated. How does it work no matter what order? I'm like, it's 4 things and they're all mutually exclusive. Like, they don't overlap too much. And then we started, the ways they do overlap and connect are in ways that don't ruin kind of the player kind of angle, like the clues and that, it's more like character relationships overlap or theme motivations or.
That's cool.
That's super smart. I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if this makes sense or is interesting to anybody who has not played the game before. I think it is, because it's just a really smart. It's like, from my perspective, playing the game, it does appear to be very complex in terms of all the different things you can do and the simulation that's happening, and it all sort of like there's a story and I had a through line. It felt like a linear story to me, but clearly not. But when you break it down how you built it, it's actually pretty simple, which I think are the coolest. Yeah. It's like we had these 4 storylines that we built mutually exclusively, and you can kind of go through them however you want. It makes a lot of sense when you say it.
Yeah, I think the part where it ends up getting, I think we started, and I think this goes for all aspects of the story, because those are almost very mechanic centric in a weird way, because it's like, well, each one of these, like the Quantum Moon's a good example. There's like 3 rules you need to learn, and so we were like, cool, now that's 3 locations, and then as we started out with these fairly like simple on paper kind of structures. And then as we worked on it over the years, and it really was like, we got very lucky that we got so long to work on this game. Otherwise, I don't think it would have been very good. The more you work on it and the more things it does start to get messy, right? And it does start to get a little more complicated, but because there's sort of this core underlying structure, it gets complicated in a way that's still like manageable. Yeah. Because once we have like, okay, these 3 locations are going to give you clues, you need to learn to reach this location. But then we start having questions, like I would sit down with Kelsey and we'd be like, okay, well, what's the narrative thread for this particular clue? Okay, a Nomai has gone missing in the caves. Okay, the player's going to find. And so there's like tiers, right? You've got like the really high level stuff. And then you've got like the mid level, like, okay, where do these clues go in the world? And then you get down here and you're like, what is this individual narrative thread? So the moment to moment gameplay is telling you a little story. And so, but it makes it manageable, right? And then by the end of it, you're like, oh God.
Was the ship log in the design from the beginning, or was that something that you added as you were building?
The idea for the ship log was in from the beginning, in the sense that we wanted there to be, we didn't want players to necessarily have to take pen and paper notes to play the game, right? It was originally intended as, and it's still intended as just a way to help you keep track of things you've known. We really don't. I tried really hard to make sure the ship log doesn't tell you anything you technically don't know. But originally it organized, so there's 2 modes in the ship log. There's rumor mode and there's map mode. And map mode organizes everything by planet. And then rumor mode is the detective board, the crazy conspiracy map. Originally, it was only map mode. And we actually had a play test at Annapurna that went very poorly. And players, and I remember because afterwards, Lona and I were like, oh no, like this could work, but players aren't like it's not clear to players like what this game is essentially. And so we came up with the idea of what if the ship log just looks like our own internal design documents? Because that's how we represented all this stuff internally, was sort of like lines drawn between things. And I remember that I was like, Lone, I don't think we can do all 4 curiosities on the same board without like it being a complex nightmare. But then I tried it and I was like, oh, he's right. It works somehow. Like with it, like all getting them all to like not, all the lines not crisscross. It's just like, I can't believe these all fit on one image.
Yeah.
It's on everything, right? Too. It's on like Switch, PC, Xbox.
The Switch was the most recent edition. Can't believe it's on Switch, but yeah.
It's not a mobile, is it?
No, God, no.
Yeah.
The big thing, the funny thing is modern mobile is probably more powerful than the Switch, but it's the controls would be a huge problem.
Oh, right. Yeah. That was the only thing that I knew going into it. Like, you may want to bounce off of this game because of the controls, but give it, I think I was told 20 minutes and it'll be, it'll be like second nature. I really like the controls.
Oh, I'm glad.
I did struggle.
It's hard, right? It's hard to communicate. That's one area of the game where like, if we had a second crack at it, that's one of the few things where I'd be like, yeah, there's probably a better way to not make the controls easier per se, but better communicate to players that like no, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
This is some.
So you played on Steam Deck, Alex, and Owen on Switch?
Correct.
Okay. Cool.
Oh, he played on Switch. Nice. I'm really happy that we worked with a team at Unity to do the Switch port, and
cool.
They did just really incredible work. But it still took like way longer than anyone thought it was going to. We were like, yeah, it's the Switch. Like, I just can't believe it runs. Frankly, like, all the physics stuff going on.
So, Outer Wilds came out a little while ago. What are you working on? Can you talk at all about what you're working on now?
I can say this I did good. Jackie did do a quick. We were just like, what can I actually say? We can say that we're working on something. It's going to be years before we release it.
Okay.
And I really can't talk about anything else other than team's working on stuff.
Okay, so you are working on a new game,
mm-hmm.
and it will be out in years.
In some number of years. I'm allowed to say that.
Well, good for you that you get the space to. I mean, I guess you kind of figured out from Outer Wilds that experience that you'd need time to make it special.
Yeah, no, we're very lucky in that regards, and again, we the Switch port was an undertaking, so that obviously took some time, and but no, we've spent some time. We've been doing did a lot of prototypes and stuff, and just had time to explore kind of what we wanted to make next. And are
you still working with Kelsey on this one with your sister?
It's too early to. Like we haven't. It's
too early for story.
It's too early. We're still very early days in terms of like the structure of the team and all of that. So I pretty much no comment on in terms of any like who's working on what. Yeah.
Well done. Very good.
Yeah.
All right, Alex, we kept you a little over. Thank you so much for spending the afternoon with us. It was great to hang out.
Yeah. Thanks again for having me on. This is fun.
Nice meeting you, Alex.
Yeah, no, nice meeting you both.
All right, cool. Sweet. Well, best of luck with your new project. We will set a reminder on our calendar for maybe 2 years out, and we'll check back in. See how 3 years. Does that sound good? Awesome. All right, cool. We'll see you around.
Cheers.
All right, thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Fourth Curtain Podcast. Visit us at thefourthcurtain.com to find our monthly newsletter and support the show via Patreon. The Fourth Curtain Podcast is a production of Fourth Curtain Media. Lovingly edited by Bryen Hensley of Noise Floor Sound Solutions. Production support by May Lee with community management by Doug Zartman and art production by Paul Russell. Thanks again for listening.